Hey guys, this is Sergeant Phoenix back in the action, and as you can see, this is my Vampire Start practice deck profile. I got requested on my last deck profile, my personal Layer of Darkness plus Necro, Dark Necrophia deck combination, because someone commented that they really liked my deck's strategy and they wanted to use it. So I asked, was there any decks they would like to request for me to profile, and I believe they said, and they did say a vampire deck, because you don't see them around anymore. So I did. So I had a look on eBay, other sources, to see what would be a decent deck build. Vampires aren't my overall favourite, but they are still okay, because I have a friend who uses them in college. So here we go, as usual. We'll do monsters, spells, traps, then the extra deck. So first we have 3 copies of Vampire Familiar. If this card is special summoned, you can pay 500 life points, add 1 vampire monster from your deck to your hand, except Vampire Familiar. If this card is in your graveyard, you can send 1 vampire card from your hand or face upon the field to the graveyard, special summon this card but banish it when it leaves the field. And you can only use each effect of Vampire Familiar once per turn. So it's got a decent summoning effect. Next we've got Vampire Retainer, and its effects. If this card is special summoned, you can pay 500 life points, add 1 vampire spell or trap card from your deck to your hand. If this card is in your graveyard, you can send 1 vampire monster card from your hand or face up on the field to the graveyard to special summon this card, but banish it when it leaves the field. So basically it works like Familiar. This is for monsters, this is for spells and traps, which is actually okay. And you can only use each effect of Vampire Retainer once per turn. So it's actually got some decent effects work. Next I put in Vampire Koala, because it's an okay card to use. Its effect is, if this card inflicts battle damage to your opponent, by battle with a monster, gain life points equal to the battle damage inflicted. So let's say your opponent has a face monster, let's say 500 attack. Since that is 1800, that'll deal 1300. So that damage your opponent took gets added to you get 1300 extra life points from it. Now this card is one you definitely need for this deck, I would say. Vampire Sorcerer, and definitely 3 copies of it, because of these effects. If this card in your possession is sent to your graveyard by your opponent's card, you can add 1 dark vampire monster or 1 vampire spell or trap card from your deck to your hand, but banish this card from... You can banish this card from your graveyard. 1 dark vampire monster you normal summon this turn can be summoned without tributing. So let's say I wanted to summon a level 8 vampire, I'm just randomly doing numbers. I could summon it without tributing. I can summon it straight away without tributing. Next we have 1 copy of Vampire Lord. Ironically, the major signature ones I have, like the main signatures, are usually 3. But for my personal deck, I just put 3 Necrophies because it just helps the deck. Now this card's effects. If this card inflicts battle damage to your opponent, declare 1 type of card, monster, spell or trap. Your opponent sends 1 card of that type from the deck to the graveyard, so they have to choose. Once per turn during your next standby phase, after this card in your possession was destroyed and sent to the graveyard by an opponent's card effect, special summon this card from your graveyard. So it's got a decent resurrecting effect, but it has to work by your opponent. But your opponent has to be the one who sends it. Next we have Vampire Scarlet Scourge. Its effects. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can pay 1000 life points, then target 1 vampire monster in your graveyard except Vampire Scarlet Scourge. Special summon it, but it cannot attack this turn. You can only use this effect of Vampire Scarlet Scourge once per turn. At the end of the battle phase, if this card destroyed any monster or monsters by battle, you can special summon them from the graveyard to your field. So that way, if you summon a monster and you wanted to summon Vampire Lord, if you didn't have Vampire Sorcerer in the graveyard, you could summon it you could use that tribute instead. Which I think is actually quite decent. Next, we have 2 copies of Vampire Crimson. Now, its effects are, if a monster or monsters you control will be destroyed by battle or an opponent's card effect, you can pay 1,000 life points for each monster that would be destroyed. Instead, you must protect all your monsters that would be destroyed if you use this effect. So obviously, if it was 2 monsters, then it would be 2,000 life points, I'm guessing. At the end of the battle phase, if this card destroyed any monsters by battle, you can special summon them from the graveyard to your field. So it also possesses Scarlet Scourge's effects. So it's quite decent. Next we have 2 copies, of Vampire Vamp. Now its effects are, once per turn, when this card or a vampire monster is normal summoned to your field, you can target one face-up monster your opponent controls whose attack is higher than this card's, equip it to this card. This card gains attack equal to the combined original attack of the monster equipped to it by this effect. If this card is sent to the graveyard while equipped with a card or cards by an effect, special summon this card. So that's good. So it can use your opponent, so let's say Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, equips it there, so it gains 6,500 attack points. When it's destroyed while equipped, it gets special summoned. That's what you learn about vampires. They're quite a summoning based. But I would say, so that's actually okay, I would say. So next we have, as you can see, 2 copies of Shadow Vampire. Now its effects are, cannot be used as material for an Xyz summon except for an Xyz summon of a dark monster. When this card is normal summoned, you can target one dark vampire monster from your hand or deck except Shadow Vampire. But monsters you control cannot attack for the rest of the turn except the special summon monster. So that's good. So you can special summon another vampire, which is the same level as this one if you wanted, or an even higher level, just in case you wanted a higher level monster, which could help out summon it. But if you had no other monsters on the field but that, it would help. Next we have Vampire Red Baron. Now its effects are, once per turn you can pay 1,000 life points, then target one monster your opponent controls and one other vampire monster you control. Switch control of those monsters. At the end of the battle phase, if this card destroyed any monster or monsters by battle, you can special summon them from the graveyards to your field. So it has that effect to keep using your opponent's monsters against them. Which helps out, because if you got them out of the field and they keep summoning out your opponent's monsters that they keep destroying, you could then just use them for tributes or summons if you added different cards in. Next, they have 3 copies of Mystic Tomato. When this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon one dark monster with 1,500 or less attack from your deck in face-up attack position. Most of the time, people just summon out 3 of these if there's like 3 monsters. I've seen it in, you see it get done in both Legacy of the Duelist, Link Evolution, and other things. Next, I decided to add Plague Spreaders on me, just to help out, just in case of an emergency. Like, if you have no monsters but you need to summon something out. If this card is in your graveyard, you can place 1 card from your hand on the top of your deck, special summon this card, but banish it when it leaves the field. It could, you never know when that could be useful. And it helps because I actually do have a Syncro in this deck, and this is a Tuna monster. Next, I have Dark Griever. Its effects are, you can special summon this card from your hand by discarding 1 level 5 or higher dark monster. Once per turn, you can discard 1 dark monster, send 1 dark monster from your deck to the graveyard. So it's based, which would be really good for which is actually quite good for Layer of Darkness if you think about it. Because sending them to the graveyard, if you're using my combination, you could use it to summon Dark Necrophy a lot easier if you sent 3 monsters and you had Dark Necrophy in your hand. Now up to spell cards, and the first being the signature on the thumbnail, Vampire Kingdom, the field spell. Zombie-type monsters gain 500 attack during damage calculation only. Once per turn, when a card or card is sent to your opponent's deck from your opponent's an opponent's deck to the graveyard, target one card on the field, send one dark vampire monster from your hand or deck to the graveyard, and if you do, destroy that card. So it's got a decent effect. So during attacks, they gain that extra attack. They gain extra. Next we have the continuous spell, Vampire Domain. Once per turn, you can pay 500 life points during your main phase. This turn, you can normal summon Vampire Monster in addition to your normal summon or set, even if this card leaves the field. So let's say I had Vampire Sorcerer, summoned Vampire Lord by banishing Vampire Sorcerer, but I still had another Vampire Monster. I could do that was let's say familiar. I could just summon that straight up. I could just summon that normally. In addition to your normal summoning, this card just looking for. Okay, you can only gain this effect once per turn. Each time your vampire monster inflicts battle damage to your opponent, gain the same amount of life points. So this helps a lot. Because with vampire decks, with vampires like these, you have to keep paying life points, which can be a pain. Next, I have 3 copies of Vampire Desire. But I would say actually get more copies of this if you can. But this is a practice deck. Activate one of these effects. Target one face-up monster you control. Send one vampire monster from your deck to the graveyard with a different level from that monster. And if you do, the targeted monster becomes the level of that sent monster in the graveyard until the end of this turn. This can help with the Xyz summoning methods. Target one the other effect is target one vampire monster in your graveyard. Send one monster you control to the target one vampire monster in your graveyard. Send one monster you control to the graveyard, and if you do, special summon the targeted monster. The targeted monster, and you can only activate one Vampire Desire per turn. This can help a lot if you're mainly doing it for an Xyz. Swords of Reveal and Light. Everyone should know what this is if you've been on this channel before, because it's used in many decks, even the popular ones. Activate this card after this card's activation. It remains on the field, but destroy it during the end phase of your opponent's third turn. When this card is activated, if your opponent controls face down a face down monster, flip all monsters they control face up. While this card is on the field, your opponent cannot declare an attack. So basically, your opponent can't attack for 3 of their turns when it's activated, and it stays on the field until then. Book of Life. You need this in a zombie deck because vampires are zombies. Target one zombie monster in your graveyard and one monster in your opponent's graveyard. Special summon the first target and banish the second target. So I special summon the vampire, let's say, I wanted, but I banished the one from my opponent's graveyard. And you see that get done by Camula when she goes up against Koala. She summoned one of her vampires and then one of her monsters, but then and she banished Ancient Gear Beast. And Ancient Gear Beast is actually a really good Ancient Gear monster, I think. Special summon one vampire monster from your deck, but destroy it during the end phase. I forgot to mention this is a Vampire Awakening. It had 3 cards. Sorry about that. I forgot I was rambling on then. So again, its effect. Special summon one vampire monster from your deck, but destroy it during the end phase of this turn. You can only activate one Vampire Awakening per turn. So this could be okay. You never know if you might need it. This could work. Let's see this one. Can't remember which one it is. I can't remember which one it is, but it could help with anyone. Next we have Haunted Shrine. If you control no monsters, target one zombie monster in your graveyard. Special summon it. If you control no monsters, you can banish this card from your graveyard, then target one zombie monster in your graveyard, special summon it, but its effects are negated. You can only use one Haunted Shrine effect per turn, and only once that turn. So, Haunted Shrine. You might not need this, but maybe you could replace this with a life point gainer just in case you don't have a lot of Vampire Domain, which could be helpful. Next we have Mirror Force. And this is an obvious card. This is like one of the main cards used and well known. Because it's like, I got all these monsters out, I play this, get rid of them all. When an opponent's monster clears an attack, destroy all your opponent's attack position monsters. Which is like goodbye. And I play Mirror Force, goodbye to all your monsters. If they can't be destroyed, if they can be destroyed by card effects, that's just basically goodbye to them. Now we're up to extra decks. Now I only have one Syncro, but only 3 Xyz. And I managed to get these really cheap, so it was easy for me to get them. And I did have a Zombie World deck, which gave this and a few other cards you could use. So first, the Syncro Red Eye Zombie Necro Dragon. It needs 1 tuner and 1+ non-tuner monsters. Gains 100 attack and defense for each zombie monster on the field and in the graveyards. When another zombie monster is destroyed by battle, you can special summon 1 zombie monster from either graveyard to your field, and you can only use this effect of Red Eye Zombie Necro Dragon once per turn. And this is a good effect. Like I said, if you use it with Zombie World, you could summon out your opponent's monsters because it turns all your opponent's monsters into zombies, even in the graveyard, I believe, which would make sense. But you could use it to summon all your other vampires from your graveyard that you've used, which maybe I would say get more of these if you wanted to. Now, first we have the first Syncro, Crimson Knight Vampire Bram. It needs 2 level 5 zombie monsters. You can detach 1 material from this card, then target 1 monster opponent control in your opponent's graveyard. Special summon that target to your field, but only that monster can attack for the rest of this turn. Excuse me, I just need a drink of water. My throat's a bit dry. What was I up to? Yeah, only that monster can attack when it's special summoned by this effect. You can only use this effect of Crimson Knight Vampire Bram once per turn. Once per turn, this is another effect. During your standby phase of the next turn after this card you control was destroyed by an opponent's card and sent to the graveyard, special summon it in defense position. Which might not be good handy because it's got 0 defense, but you could use it for a tribute, you never know. Next I have Dampir Vampire Sheridan. I can't pronounce it. This requires 2 level 6 monsters. If you use a monster or monsters with a level that is owned by your opponent for an Xyz summon of this card, treat it as a level 6. Once per turn, you can detach 1 material from this card, then target 1 card your opponent controls, send it to the graveyard. Once per turn, if a monster card or card is sent from the field to your opponent's graveyard by a card effect, or a monster is destroyed by battle and sent to your opponent's graveyard, you can detach 1 material from this card, special summon 1 of those monsters on the field to your field in defense position. This could be useful. I would say if you mainly build your deck vampires on level 6s, you could use this one. Because I do have another level 6 here, the number card, number 24, Draculus the Vampiric Dragon. And this is one I see used all the time in vampires. It's like the main signature one. 2 level 6 monsters it will require to summon. Once per turn, during either player's turn, you can detach 1 Xyz material from this card, then target 1 face-up monster on the field that was special summoned from the extra deck. Change it to face-down defense position. If this face-up card in its owner's control is sent to the graveyard or banished by your opponent's card effects, you can special summon this card in face-down defense position. If this card is flipped face-up, send 1 card on the field to the graveyard. So it has a lot of sending effects, really, and summoning. But it has got 2800 defense, so the flip to the face-down effect would be decent. so long as your opponent doesn't use like a Blue Eyes or something. Now, my opinion on vampires, like I've said, I'm not a major fan of them, mainly because of the life point thing, but there's usually, but with the latest cards that I've shown, which I believe are the latest vampires, they have actually found ways to turn it around, really, which is good. The best thing you can do with these cards that are still popular is give them new cards that can just help them out just a little more. Sorry, I'm just getting another drink of water. But I would say it's an okay deck to practice with. I would say the deck I've just profiled. I would give it, if I was to rate it 1 to 10, probably a 6 to a 7. That's my opinion. So comment down below what you thought of the deck. Bless me. Again though, comment down below what you thought of this deck profile. I think the deck's actually okay to use for a good practice if you want to get into vampires a little more. And it does seem to be mainly based, but it is based on like summoning and tributing, I would mainly say, which is fine for me. Because I do use a Layer of Darkness deck and a Dark Necrophia deck, which is based on sending to the graveyard, either in many different methods. And I do use banishing effects most of the time because I use Dark Necrophia. But what I would like to say from the person who did request on what they thought of the deck, on what they think of this profile, and what decks they would change, what cards they would change from this, or what they would add in and remove to make it better. Because obviously the more people have different thoughts on how to improve one person's deck, it's better for everyone, really. So until then, this is Sergeant Phoenix, over and out.